Hey guys, today I'm talking about team building for Wuthering Waves. I think there's an important video to make because this is a party of 3 game, and in a game like this the boundaries between roles aren't as prominent as other party of 4 games. There are characters that are obviously designed to be of a specific role in the party, but there are also characters that can fulfill more than one role. Take for example Yanshin, who is a tank/support with shields and added survivability through her parry skill, but can also be a sub-DPS because her damage is non-negligible, plus her Resonance Liberation has great CC to enable the DPS. Now the go-to team composition seems to be DPS, sub-DPS, support, because it's the safest and overall best for overworld exploration, which is what most people are going to be doing for at least a couple of weeks. There are archetypes when using certain character combinations because with just 2 characters, hypothetically speaking, you can fill all 3 roles in your team. Granted, they're not going to be as efficient as having one character dedicated to one role fully, but it is still a possibility, especially in the early to mid stages in the game, depending on what characters you run for this archetype team composition of whatever it is you're running. In some cases, these archetypes can be even better than the status quo team composition, given under the right circumstances. Now going into detail about the go-to team composition, the DPS role is self-explanatory. Main damage dealer may or may not want more time on the field. With the current cast of characters that we have on release, DPSs are definitely going to want as much time as possible on the field, and that's not even including the fact that you have to charge up a lot of different stuffs, not just the character's ultimate. So the DPS character will always want more time on the field than others. It just depends on how quickly they can charge their stuff before switching out. Sub-DPS is by far the most versatile, broad, and loosely explained role in the game. We've covered our bases in terms of DPS for damage and support for healing/shielding, but more on that later. And everything in between that these 2 roles do not cover is just shoved into the sub-DPS role. Whatever they can do that helps the team out is going to be classified as a sub-DPS. I mean, sub-DPSs can buff or enable the DPS, they can debuff or disable enemies, and an added bonus to their... And as an added bonus, they could have some sort of sustain, although this is not necessary. Off-field damage is crucial here. DPS or supports may not have off-field damage, but it's not that big of a deal. Now, if a sub-DPS doesn't have off-field damage, it's not the end of the world, but at the same time, they could be a much better character if they had off-field damage on top of everything that they might already do. The support role is not as complex as a sub-DPS role, but is also not as straightforward as a main DPS. Case in point, they add survivability to the team. Make sure the team is ready to fight, ready to dish out damage, whether it be through healing or shielding or buffing team defense or even shredding enemy attack. Off-field damage, like I said, is good, but not exactly necessary. Same thing with the main DPS. Off-field damage is good, not necessary. In the early game, the support role is going to be the least important role. Survivability is not going to make a difference between beating an enemy or getting destroyed, most of the time. And this is especially true when enemies don't deal enough damage to your characters in the beginning stages of the game. Maybe even up to mid-game. You should prioritize damage above all else. Enabling, healing, or shielding are quality of life. So for early game, you can run any team composition you want. You could go 3 DPS and will probably still be fine. Maybe. As you progress and hit a plateau, it will become increasingly difficult to continue beating enemies with your 3 DPS team. So you want to switch to the standard team composition, or at least something closer to that. A main DPS's worth is determined by their ability to deal massive damage, so pick yourself any DPS character or any character that you want to run as a DPS. They don't even have to be DPS. Their team should revolve around them. Skills, ultimates, passives, anything that can synergize with the main DPS should be valued and taken into consideration. A sub DPS will either usually have off-field damage or DPS buff in the form of an outro skill effect. Some may even have CC, which is always good. And like I said earlier, early game supports are quality of life, because survivability is not a must-have when most enemies don't deal considerable damage. Only when you reach mid-game, maybe even late game, the support will become a staple in team compositions. There's a thing in this game that might require some of you to run a healer even in the early stages of the game. That little something is called a skill issue. Anyways, I categorize supports as healers and or shielders. Same thing applies here, as in the sub DPS role. CC is not necessary, but it is good if the support has any. As far as shielding goes, I believe the amount of shields and the quality of said shields generated by the current roster of characters are not enough to keep your team alive within an extended encounter. As soon as the shields give out, you get hit, lose health, can't recuperate. This is a constraint on the player's gameplay, and we should not be punished for running a shielder as a support instead of a healer. I think the option to choose what type of support we want is what would make this game as fun as possible for as long as possible. The player should have the freedom to choose whatever team they want, as long as it's functional to some degree. I mean, if you are good enough at the game, you can run triple DPS. You can run triple DPS. Right? Even if you're not good, you can run it. Who cares if you can't beat an enemy? As long as you have fun, you use the characters you want to use, build the team up. But if there is a skill issue, then at least with this information, you can go ahead and build your own team of whatever you want. And if you don't remember anything that I've said for the past however long this video in minutes is gonna be, just remember that the sub DPS is what makes or breaks the team. The healer, the support that is most likely going to be a healer for your team does not have to synergize whatsoever with the DPS or the sub DPS. It's its own thing. The only synergy you have to worry about is between the DPS and the sub DPS. If you want to run anybody as a DPS, you want to run a healer as a DPS, just make sure that your sub DPS, at least in some way, shape, or form, synergizes with this character you're trying to run as a main DPS. Don't forget to comment your thoughts, drop a like, sub if you want to. Tell me what you agree, disagree with. Tell me what teams you're going to be running for early, mid, or late game. Maybe I'll try them out if they're goofy enough. Yeah, that's about it. See ya.